3 meeting. As soon as our secretary gets back to his seat, we'll have a roll call attendance.
Mark Acosta,
Here.
Nancy Burkhart,
Here.
Rick Ferris,
Here.
Scott Baldwin.
Here. Board members, have you all had a chance to review the minutes of last month's meeting? Are there any additions or corrections? And we take a motion to approve.
Move we approve as written.
Second.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose no. The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is renewals of conditional use permits. We had 4. Harold Perry, Miller Automotive, Mike and Melissa Hess, Stephen and Don Whalen. All 4 have paid their renewal fee, and there have been no complaints, so hats off to these people. I move that we renew all 4 of these conditional use permits.
Second.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed no. They are renewed. Now, we've slightly changed the order of business. We will do tabled applications first, and we do have one. It's Oyster Catcher LLC. It's a conditional use permit for a vacation home and a short-term rental. Location 312 Poplar Street, Historic District Residential. So would someone come up, please, for the record, give your name and address and explain what you're doing here? I mean, what your plans for the place are.
For rephrasing, Ken McWilliams, 315 Poplar, and I'm representing the homeowner at 312 Poplar, who happens to be my daughter.
And I notice you've renovated that property. And could you explain to the board and the audience what
The
your
great
plans
news
are?
is it was her money, not mine, so it was a great win. What would you like to know?
I would like to know what your plans for the property are, the operating hours, parking, how many people will be there, things
There's
like that.
3 bedrooms, so 4 beds, so the max that could be there would be 6. You know, it's Airbnb style rental, so it would be days at a time, a single day, or, you know, probably 2-day minimum. You know, so it's a very simple kind of setup, so.
Okay. Do you have a set of rules?
Yes, you'll see them in your minutes. Or in your packet.
We have the Wi-Fi passcode also.
Pardon me?
We have the Wi-Fi passcode also.
Yes, you do. So I would just park outside and use it.
And the only relevant one to our consideration, no loud noise between 10 p.m. and 9 a.m. Board members, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Will this be handled like independently, or will it be through Airbnb, or?
She has not made that decision yet. So she's
Okay.
interviewing, you know, she obviously knows the Airbnb, you know, protocol, but she's interviewing people in town that would do that for her.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet,
Okay.
so.
I guess my only concern is parking, because that's a very narrow, crowded street. There's
Yes, it
no
is.
parking there.
No, it is an issue, and then when HMI starts their 5-year renovation of Sullivan, it's going to be worse. So, you know, that's why I say there's additional parking on Second, and by summer, late spring, when she will have this up, theoretically, the city's parking lot at the comfort station will be finished. So there will be additional options.
So is she gonna live there if she's not renting it out?
She lives in Seattle, so no, she won't live there. So
Oh.
she doing this just so she has some place to stay when she comes visits.
So you're anticipating renting possibly, you said 3 bedrooms, possibly 3 different groups at the same time?
No, there's 3 bedrooms, limits how many people can come. But no, I don't think anyone would ever have 3 different groups come in.
I think you're
Is-
thinking about 3 different cars, is that what you were thinking?
That's where I'm
Yeah.
getting to. How many
Oh.
cars?
Oh, I don't know. I can't guess, yeah, but they could bring 3 cars if there's groups of, different groups of families joining together, absolutely.
Board members, any other concerns or questions?
None here.
Is there any off-street parking with the house, or is it all just gonna be on-street parking?
There's no backyard, there's no rear entry at all, so we tried to acquire some and couldn't do it, so. So it's just street parking.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, board members? Questions? Would anybody in the audience, you can sit down, sir. Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Okay, board members, one last chance. Well, if not, we will move on to our findings of fact. Number one, this is also under category number 581 in the official schedule of uses. Number one, you would agree this is I'll just summarize and not read the whole thing. Do you agree this is a conditional use in accordance with the zoning ordinance? Mr. Acosta,
Yes, I do.
Mr. Ferris,
I do as well.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yes, 581 is allowed under historic district with conditional use.
and I agree. It is a permissible one, and it's been used before for this. Number two, harmonious with, accordance with the general objectives of the zoning ordinance comprehensive plan. Mr. Acosta,
Yes, I see it complementing it, tourism and improvement of the downtown area.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree as well. We've got another party that's interested in remodeling a downtown home, and that's a good thing.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yeah, I agree with those comments.
and the comprehensive plan obviously is designed to make Madison thrive, so I see no problems there. Number three, is this harmonious with the existing or intended character of the general area? Mr. Acosta,
Yeah, again, I think it's complementary.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree. I think it enhances that area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
The general area is residential and so forth. It's the same thing it's always been. I think that one's met. Number four, hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighbor uses. Mr. Acosta.
I think not. I mean, this is becoming a more and more popular use of the homes, especially in the downtown area. So I think it fits with the trends.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree as well. I think it, it's not changing the intended use of, or gonna affect the neighborhood, so I think all the conditions are met.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, all the conditions are met.
This is a typical thing that's showing up more and more downtown. And the provision of no noise between 10 p.m. and 9 a.m. if enforced should protect neighboring uses. Number five, this is the one about public utilities and so forth. Mr. Acosta.
See no issue. I mean, it's a functioning residence now and being renovated or already renovated, so no issues with facilities.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree as well. I mean, it's a 3-bedroom home. The occupancy, isn't gonna change. So I don't see any reason to be concerned with any of those.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I think it'll be adequately conserved.
And its downtown utilities of all nature are quite adequate for the downtown. I think that one's met. Number 6, excessive requirements for public facilities and services not detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, I don't see any, exposure of public expense, for facilities, but, it would be complementary to the economic welfare of the community.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I also agree.
And I see no great need for public services and so forth, and it will provide some income to the community, so I think that one's met. Number 7, this is the one about excessive production of traffic noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors, so forth. Mr. Acosta.
No, see no issue with that whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I, I see no reason to believe that, there's gonna be any, detriment to the neighborhood due to
Mrs.
any of those things.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree, they have a set of rules to abide by, so I don't see a problem with that.
The biggest one, possibly there are 2 I see, possible traffic and noise. I think the noise is cared for in their rules. And excessive production of traffic, probably not, so I think that one's met. Number 8, this is the one not designed not to create an interference with other traffic. Mr. Acosta.
I don't really see any issue with that. If this were used as a full-time residence, there'd be a couple cars there anyway, so I don't see where, traffic's gonna be impacted by the use of for this purpose.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with, those comments as well.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree, it's not really a heavily traffic road anyway.
And the point of, we're at a private residence, be 1 or 2 cars. So I think that's a point well taken. I think that one's met. And number 9, last one, destruction of scenic or historic features. Mr. Acosta.
No, I see it being very complimentary to the area.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I think it's just the opposite of those things. I think it will, benefit and enhance, those features.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I'll agree with those comments.
And it's helping preserve the nature of downtown Madison. I think it's met. We've gone through our findings of fact. I move we approve this conditional use permit for a period of 1 year on the condition that the submitted rules are followed.
I'll second that.
And can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhardt,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes,
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, sir, you have your conditional use permit.
Very much.
We'll go on to the next one on the agenda. Now, there are actually 2 by the same applicant, Catherine Evans. The first one is at 1328 West Second, and this is for a guest home and a short-term rental. The second one is at 1229 West Main Street. This one is for an event space and a partial short-term rental. Now, I understand that there are some folks in the audience that have some issues with the event space. So we will, for the purposes of this meeting, we'll consider the first application, which is merely a guest home, a short-term rental, Airbnb type thing, because I understand there's not much controversy about this. And then when we consider the second one, if anybody objects to the event space or so forth, that'll be the time to air your concerns about that issue. And of course, if you have concerns about short-term rental, you'll be allowed to speak after the first one. So, I assume you're Miss Evans?
Yes, I'm Catherine Sally Evans, owner of 1229 West Main Street and 1328 West Second. If we're going to talk about 1328 West Second first,
That's the first one.
that was the property we purchased in November, and we would like to ask permission, conditional use permit, excuse me, to allow for short-term rentals on that property. At the very first meeting I was at, I sent via email. I did not bring those hard copies tonight because they weren't requested the first time, of our house rules and things like the gentleman previously submitted. But we will make sure to observe quiet hours, to make sure that we are operating with all of the city ordinances on sound decibels. Parking should not be an issue, as this property has its own parking pad for 2 to 3 cars. And we're just happy to have it. It's the first time that the property has kind of been put back with 1229 West Main Street since 1940, so we think that's pretty cool.
Okay, so, just for the record and for people in the audience, your application came up a couple of months ago.
I think in August. maybe.
August. And there were some issues because the uses weren't allowed in the zoning at the time, although it had been used as a short-term rental for years. I forget the name of it,
The Whitehall Bed and Breakfast was
Whitehall.
1229 West Main Street,
Right.
yes, sir.
So the board recommended that she go to city council and have the zoning of this property changed to something appropriate, and she went through that process. So city council did in case you're not fully up on zoning, city council is the one that makes all laws and so forth about zoning ordinances. We don't on this board. We're just dealing with what city council approves. They're the lawmakers. So she appeared before them, and they changed zoning to a more appropriate zoning for this kind of a use. And so now she is reappearing, and this one is simply for a vacation rental or a short-term rental and so forth, which is allowed under, zoning was changed to, thank you. It was changed to historic district residential, and the appropriate category is number 581, which is allowed. So, considering 1328 West Second Street, short-term rental, board members, do you have any questions or comments?
I have a question for clarity. The application under owner information says Sally's by the Shore.
Correct.
Who is that?
That's our business. So you had a commercial loan through our business to purchase the home.
Okay, and it lists an address of Winnemac.
Yes, my mother and I are co-owners, but she's primary holder on the house loan.
Okay.
Co-owners of the business, I meant.
Any other questions, comments? And you said that you have submitted a set of rules?
Yes, I sent those over to Joe at the very first meeting when I didn't realize that we'd have to have 2 applications. And I think at that time we were we had not actually acquired the property yet, but we were in negotiations and contractual agreements with the sellers of 1328 West Second. So if for some reason we don't have access to those, I can try to bring those up via email.
I do recall those being part of that package at the time.
You do, sir?
I
Okay.
do recall.
Okay,
it,
good,
yeah.
thank you, yes.
And refresh, Dallas Leash, part of your, rules were quiet times.
Yes, of course. We would observe quiet hours. I think what's pretty standard, what I looked at with other Airbnbs, is 10 p.m. to, I think, 8 a.m. We would make sure that those are followed. We feel that this is going to be very manageable for us because it's right behind our house. So we'll be able to keep a really close eye on what's going on and be very aware of, anything that might be a concern to a neighbor. We want to make sure that we're operating in a neighborly friendly way. Also, the fact that our house is right behind it, we have 3 little kids, so we'll be on high alert all the time on what's going on that property. But yeah, quiet hours will be observed. No smoking allowed on or in the property. Let's see, what else? Parking again won't be an issue. So the main thing to me that might be a concern for the neighbors would be the parking or the noise, and we will abide by the quiet hours and the decibels required within the city ordinances.
How many parking spaces? Refresh my memory.
The pad easily fits 2, but there's also kind of a little gravel area that the former owners had put where they parked a 3rd vehicle, so there should be able to easily park 3 vehicles right in front of 1328 on 2nd Street.
So that's all off-street and won't impinge on any neighbors parking?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And could you refresh us on the max occupancy?
Yes, it's a 3-bedroom. We have 2 queens and a full, so that's 6. We're not going to put I don't want more than 6 people in there, so I'm not going to put like a pull-out.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Okay, audience members, remember, this is the short-term rental Airbnb type. This is not the application dealing with the event. So if anybody in the audience would like to speak to this application, feel free. Okay, one last chance, board members.
I'm good.
Well, this is a conditional use permit. Here we go. We can go through our findings of fact now. You can have a seat, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And this is category 581. So, do you agree this is a conditional use? Mr. Acosta?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Ferris?
Yes, I do.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yeah, as with the past one, it's 581 is allowed in historic district with conditional use.
And that is a true statement. Number 2, harmonious with general objectives, etc. Mr. Acosta?
Yes, as with the previous application, allowing more opportunity for tourism and visitors from out of town.
Mr. Ferris?
Yes, I do as well. I think, with the property's previous history, kind of plays into that a little bit as well, so.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree, it's harmonious with a comprehensive plan.
And I agree too. It's harmonious with these things. Number 3, harmonious, appropriate appearance with the existing or intended character of the general area. Mr. Acosta?
Yeah, I think, see no issues with that whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I see no issues with that one either.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree, it doesn't change the character of the area.
And that thing has been there since Civil War days at least, so I think that it's not gonna interfere or change anything. Number 4, hazardous or disturbing to neighboring uses. Mr. Acosta?
No, as mentioned, there's rules to be abided by as far as no disturbance, but again, it's a trend of, increasing trend in the area.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, if it was used as a residence, full-time residence, it could be occupied by that many people or more. And I don't see that being hazardous or disturbing to the neighborhood.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yeah, I don't see it disturbing when it's essentially in the backyard of the owners.
And I think with the rules and, parking of 3 cars, it's not going to disturb neighbors' parking, so I think that one's met. Number 6, accessory requirements of public expense and so forth, Mr. Acosta.
I mean, it's an operating, home at the time, so it's, certainly no additional requirements.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna create any, any additional, demands.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, I agree with both those comments.
I don't see any demands for public services, and certainly won't be detrimental to the economic welfare of Madison. Number 7, this is about detrimental because of traffic noise, smoke, etc., and so forth. Mr. Acosta.
No issues there whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I don't see any reason to believe that any of those things are gonna be produced in excess or, detrimental to anybody.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see nothing to underline.
With small, no more than 3 cars, I don't think it'll make excess traffic. And I doubt there will be any trouble with noise. Those are the relevant ones. I think that one's met. Number 8, not to create an interference with traffic, Mr. Acosta.
No, again, with the parking explained as it would be, see no issue.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, see any reason to believe that it's gonna, interfere with, traffic or thoroughfares.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Right, I see no problem with there either.
It's a very small scale operation. I don't see any interference with traffic. Number 9, destruction, natural scenic historic features, Mr. Acosta.
Again, gonna be a benefit to the surrounding area, to, have it in use. No detriment whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree, it's, the people are gonna try to maintain the property and its, position in that area, so I don't see any damage of anything.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I see no destruction with that.
And I see the preservation of an historic property. I think that one's met. But we've gone through our findings of fact. I move we approve this conditional use permit for 1328 West Second Street for a period of 1 year on the condition of submitting and adhering to the proposed rules, and that quiet hours will be maintained from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. That's my motion.
Second.
And could we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes,
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, that takes care of the first one, which was merely a short-term rental. And now, we're going to take up the second part of this, which is 1229 West Main Street. The proposed use being similar short-term rental and an event space. So, Ms. Evans, would you elaborate on especially on the event space? That seems to be the issue.
Of course, yeah. I'm Catherine Sally Evans, owner of 1229 West Main Street and 1328 West Second Street. This will now be the 4th meeting regarding 1229. I will go ahead, if it's okay, and take a couple of minutes and explain a little bit more in detail about what we want to do with 1229 and the event space, since it's been quite a few months ago since I went into detail there. So for 1229 West Main Street, our goal is to get approval for a special conditional use permit, excuse me, for micro weddings, and we're thinking like garden teas or history teas in the backyard. We love our home and its history. We feel it's very significant to Madison's historical roots. It was built at least in 1827, if not prior, according to HMI when they came out. It served as the Civil War Surgeon General's hospital headquarters during the Civil War. And we feel that it's a very important property and has been for a very long time to the Madison community. It was a long-term bed and breakfast from about early 1990s until about 2016, 2018 time frame as the Whitehall Bed and Breakfast. And we just think it has awesome history, and we want to keep maintaining the home and investing into it and sharing that history with others. We will abide by the city ordinances. This is our family home. We're living there with our 3 children, so we want to be respectful and courteous to ourselves and our own family life, and also the neighbors around us. Sound and noise decibels as far as any music, or crowd noise for that matter, we will be monitoring and stay within the required decibels. I know that there's different hours on what decibels are supposed to be met, so we will be there on site and have a decibel meter and be observing those. We will also observe quiet hours with any event, as far as the 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. We currently see, as far as hours and operating would go, we currently see this as offering events maybe 2 weekends a month, possibly a Saturday evening with a strict end time and quiet hours enforced, and maybe a Sunday afternoon. Again, this is our family home. We don't want this every weekend. I want my kids to be able to go outside and play. Parking. We have our own off-street parking. We've measured out. We should for sure be able to have 8 cars. I have been in talks with the Elks, a member of the Elks. I should get official permission toward the end of the week. They're doing some stuff with delegating positions right now. But they don't see a problem with allowing 5 to 10 excess parking spaces on that lot. I think that's owned by the Elks and the city for public parking. As far as if this gets approved, our advertisement and branding for our business, for events, we will ensure and promote that we are a very small venue, family-friendly venue. We will communicate this upfront prior to bookings to ensure that we attract the guests that fit our expectations. We're not, I don't want anything to do with like a late night party scene or loud dance crowds. We honestly see this as a very small, what's considered now micro wedding event space, or garden teas. The business, okay, so here we go. We feel we have a really good business track record. We started our ice cream shops in 2015. And in those 8 years, we have operated in 6 different cities at one time. I think for 3 years, we had shops in 4 different cities. And these were in a variety of places, residential and commercial. We had a shop in Rochester, Indiana for 6 years that literally butted up against lake houses. Very nice lake homes, and we never once had a single complaint. A handful of times through the season, we would have some acoustic music, very family friendly. It was usually done by 8 or 9 o'clock, and we never had a single complaint. Just how we're operating our businesses here in Madison, we feel that those should speak for themselves, that we try very hard to be family friendly and courteous of the other neighbors and businesses around us. Also, I'd like to mention, we are there, we're on site. We will be there for any event and monitoring the noise and what's going on so that we make sure our expectations and the expectations of our neighbors are being met with courtesy. So that would be our plan. Very small events is what we would have in mind.
What would be the maximum number of people you allow?
I think that will also depend on, I will have to go through the fire marshal, I assume, because I've had to do that with any time we've had our ice cream business. Mainly, these events would be outside in the back end area of the yard, closer to Second Street. We've also talked about utilizing our little garage barn. I personally would like to stick like sweet spot between 25 and 40 people, maybe 50, but very small. I will also communicate ahead of time that we only have so many parking spaces and encourage guests to carpool over. I would assume quite a few people will be staying, at other establishments in town, whether it be the Fairfield or other Airbnbs and whatnot, and communicate that ahead of time.
So is your yard big enough to seat that many people?
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of basing a lot of this on, we did our own wedding at our property when we lived in Rochester, Indiana, and we had a very small backyard that faced the lake. We had 70 people there. We put 10 per table and had 7 tables, and it was a much, much smaller space than what we have. The area that we're looking at as far as where tables would go, it's kind of back in the back. If you've checked out our yard, it's where the gazebo is, and we should easily be able to fit round tables there of 8 to 10. So, if it's 8 per table, maybe we'd have 6 tables that would be 48 guests.
So would you need caterers to come in to do that, or would you be handling the food? Or
I
is that more
don't
people
think
to
we
come
would
in?
be handling the food, because then I would get into, I'm pretty familiar with this, we make our own ice cream. We would end up having to have a commercial kitchen and, 3-bay sink and a wash sink and a hand wash sink and all that. So I would see we would probably have a caterer come in and most likely set up inside the little garage barn. We're going to try our best to keep what we can to the west of our property because that's owned by the state. There's no neighbors over there. The only neighbor directly associated with that end of the property is the home that we now have acquired at 1328 West 2nd.
As far as music's concerned, I know you said there's acoustic.
Yes, ma'am.
So what are you thinking with that? What all is entailed with that?
I see light pre-recorded music, very light background music, and again, this is going to be communicated to guests up front. And like I said, it's our family property, so if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. It's not going to break my heart. I'll send them somewhere like Richwood where they can have more of a party environment. So I see light pre-recorded music. Again, I'll have that. You can get a decibel meter on your phone, an app, to be able to go out and make sure at the property line that you're within the required decibel. As far as acoustic music would go, if anyone would like that, I would see maybe a guitar and a violin. I'd like to keep, as far as we've talked about, historical teas in the backyard and talking about the history of Madison, the history of the property, the Civil War history. Maybe like a small stringed quartet that just kind of lightly plays during the garden tea. My husband and I are also musicians. He has a recording studio. We've been around sound and everything our entire life, so I feel like we will have a good, respectful expectation.
And you're thinking a couple of weekends a month at the most?
At most, it would be 2 weekends a month, maybe a Saturday night and a Sunday afternoon. But, we're also running an ice cream shop, and I homeschool my kids, so that would be the most I would see doing it.
My only concern is if I was a neighbor of yours,
Right.
not that it wouldn't be done properly, but would I feel comfortable being out in my backyard? Because I wouldn't want to interfere what's going on in your backyard, but could I do what I really wanted to do in my backyard if something nice is going on next door? I don't know if you guys get what I'm saying.
I totally understand, and I totally understand all of the concerns. I mean, until this meeting, I have had no one express any concern.
Right.
But I did have a neighbor come over and talk with me, and if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd be asking all the same questions. We do plan on, and I think we plan on doing this anyway, putting some privacy fence up on our property line on the east side, just to make our yard more private.
Right.
And so it wouldn't be like you're looking at what other
Right.
people are doing. The only thing I see happening in the front yard would possibly be like photo op. If a bride and groom and their bridal party wanted to stand in front of the house, it's a very beautiful, stately colonial home, which would make a great backdrop for that. Otherwise, I think most of it would be in the backyard and on the from the gazebo back, on the east side of the gazebo, there's, not a house, it's a part of the other property owner's yard. And we see trying to, put up some nice, privacy fence and more, like arborvitae screening trees. But yes, I totally I understand that concern.
Board members, any other questions, comments?
None here.
In my view, the previous property, you said there were 3 parking spaces. And here you said that you have, somewhere I wrote it down.
We've got 8.
Is
I
that 8
measured
on
off-
this property, not
On
counting?
1229, it's 8,
Okay,
yes, so,
1229 is 8.
and honestly, my thought would be, if and when we have a wedding, I would assume those would be booked well in advance. And then I would block out the time for the Airbnb so that the bride and groom could use the Airbnb as a guest space. And then we would also utilize those 3 parking spots back there as parking for an event.
Okay. Board members, anything else?
Nothing here.
Well, I understand some folk in the audience want to speak, so there may be numbers of you want to speak. Now, as I've always said here, we believe in free speech, but if there are a lot of you that want to speak, we would ask you to voluntarily limit yourself to maybe 3 minutes or so to make your point. And then the board you'll address the board. And board members may want to ask you questions or something. So if somebody from the audience would like to speak on this issue, please feel free. Yes, ma'am, come on up to the podium. And we do ask that you give your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Rhonda Ross, and I live at 1223 West Main. There's a house between my house and Sally's. And I have a petition here of 16 families just in our neighborhood right there. And we're all opposing this because our neighborhood is so quiet and it's like living in the country, and we don't want any of this noise or anything to do with this.
So your main issue is with noise.
Noise and music.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Have you?
You have a copy of the,
Yes, ma'am.
16
We
people.
got a
Okay.
copy in our packets.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Board members, do you have any questions or comments about that? What the neighbors have petitioned about? Would any other people in the audience, yes, ma'am, come on up. And if you give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Chris Bills, and I live at 1224 West Main. And I'd like to address Catherine. Catherine, we love having your family in our neighborhood. We love the kids. We love seeing the lights in your house. I guess our main issue is the noise and the music. We love to go hear your music, but we want to go to a venue. We don't want the venue coming to us. But, and we hope whatever happens today, we're still friendly neighbors. Thank you.
Would anybody else in the audience like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Scott, will you do a motion to accept the petition into the record?
Right. One moment, ma'am. We do need to do a little legal bookkeeping. I move we accept this petition into the record.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is accepted. Yes, ma'am. If you give your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Sarah Patterson, and I live at 1225 West Main, so I'm the neighbor of both 1229 and 1328. So my backyard is the neighbor of 1328. Oh, okay. So I'm the neighbor right next door. And in listening to the previous discussions, I would say I have no issue with the Airbnb, the rental property idea. I think that it fits with our neighborhood. That was already a bed and breakfast. I think that that's not a concern of anybody's. The concern is with the party venue, and to my mind, the concern is around number 3 of your fact-finding questions, which is harmonious with general character of the area. That is a residential area. The Elks Lodge is considerably farther back, and so that doesn't affect our noise or our traffic or parking around our homes. But I'm concerned with all 3 at 1229. The noise, for obvious reasons, the issue of being in your backyard and having a wedding right next to you. But I would also add traffic to the concern. That's a pretty dangerous spot because cars are zooming into Madison and then slowing down really quickly. And so when cars pull out from the Elks Lodge side street onto Main Street, that can be an issue for traffic. And so I think a number of cars coming and going all at once would cause a problem. And then I would have concerns about the parking, especially if an event had 50 people. That would be a lot of cars in that back area. So those are my concerns.
To your knowledge, has the Elks Club ever had outdoor events, parties and things?
I do not know. It's far enough away that we don't hear anything
Nobody
from
would
back
notice.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, anytime I've been to a graduation party or anything there, it's been inside. I haven't noticed anything outside.
In its previous life, there were
Right.
outdoor events there,
Yeah,
you know, one of the,
but that is considerably back farther.
yeah, quite a bit downhill.
Right.
Any other questions for the lady? Okay, thank you. Would anybody else in the audience like to speak on this issue?
Do I get a chance to?
Yes, ma'am, you can comment.
Okay. Rhonda, I know you had concerns because you came over, and I appreciate them and I understand them. Chris, I understand your concerns as well. Sarah, I understand your concerns. I haven't had the chance to meet you officially yet because I haven't seen you out yet, but I understand your concerns. As far as the traffic, I really personally don't see that being an issue because there's cars all day in and out going from the Elks Lodge. There's pickleball at night and lots of people go for that, so I don't see that really being an issue. Parking as well, I don't see that being an issue because we have our own off-street parking. As far as the noise, I mean, yeah, we are musicians and we play, and I appreciate that, but I see, as a musician, I see a big difference between what we're wanting to offer and what we would do when we go play at Mad Paddle. Background dinner music to me is much different than someone putting on a whole show, and we're not asking to be a concert venue. We're asking to provide small events. I am more than willing to put a cap on the amount of people if the parking is a concern with the number of people that would be on the property. And the other thing I wanted to comment on, the wedding in the backyard. No, the property to the right, to the west, is the property that we now own. The property to the left is Sarah's, but there's no house on it, and I've personally never seen anybody in that yard, so I don't feel like we would be that big of an inconvenience.
Well, ma'am, it is her property, so.
I understand that, but I'm just putting a comment that I feel like if we were to put some privacy fence and whatnot, I don't think we're going to be in anyone's face with feeling like they're disturbing a wedding. So, but I completely understand all of your concerns. I truly do. So, thank you.
Now, Ms. Evans, even if you don't get the event space, are you still wanting to do your house at 1229 as a short-term rental?
I'd appreciate it in case we decided we wanted to do a historical stay or something for guests in the future.
So Devin, let me ask you that. So is this something we should vote on separately, or? So then I'm gonna ask anybody in the audience if there's any problem you see as 1229 being a short-term rental. No one does? Okay. Chris,
Yes,
you wanna come
ma'am.
on up?
I didn't see anything wrong with the short term. I mean, when the bed and breakfast was over
Right.
there, it was perfectly, fine.
Okay.
So no, I
Okay.
have no issues with that part.
Thank you.
I had one question. So, this group that has an issue with the event space, this has been on our docket a couple times going back to August. Nobody ever opposed or ever showed up or made any comment opposing this.
We never got a letter until this time.
I've paid for them every time I'm up to like, what,
I think,
$400 in fees?
correct me, the letters go to adjacent property owners, correct? Okay, so.
But we
yeah.
never received a letter.
I think it was Denvis, Rhonda wasn't required, there were 8 property owners the first time until we acquired 1328, and then otherwise, I don't know, is it Denvis and Judy? Or,
Yeah, Dimbus is right.
Okay,
Yeah, probably Dimbus and Judy.
there was a bills though that we had to send to, and I sent that every time.
Yeah.
I have my green cards.
Tony,
showing.
did you have something you wanted to say?
I mean, my wife's up there speaking, we received our first green card. Very good.
Okay.
Right, green, those cards have to be sent to adjacent property owners. There are specifications in the zoning ordinance who gets those, so if you're 2 or 3 houses away,
Yeah, if you're two, if
Probably
you're
wouldn't get
two
one.
houses removed, you wouldn't, wouldn't be required to receive one.
board members, any other questions or comments?
So, are we gonna separate the two?
I think it's appropriate if the board would rather do that. Both of them are on the applications. I don't see any reason why you couldn't consider them, and then considering them separately probably makes more sense for purposes of the findings anyway.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, then, I think we will consider one last chance, board members. Because we have had some issues with event spaces and residential type, near to residential type things. And we've had some that have never been any problem whatsoever. So we will consider first, we'll consider a conditional use. This would be for the short-term rental, this would be the same as the other conditional use, number which I believe was 581. Yeah, it was
Yes.
581, so we will consider 581 the short-term rental, and we will do our findings of fact on that one, and we will make a motion to approve or deny that one. So, having said that, short-term rental, number 1, is this a conditional use? Mr. Acosta,
Yes.
Mr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yes.
And yes, that is appropriate, as it was on the other property. Number 2, harmonious with comprehensive plan, Mr. Acosta.
Yes, I think it fits as well, just as some of the previous applications, same comments.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree as well. I think it fits with all of those conditions.
Mrs.
I
Burkhart.
agree with those comments.
And the general objectives are is to keep Madison thriving, so I think that one's met. Number 3, appropriate with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, Mr. Acosta.
Oh, yeah, no issue. It's operated as a bed and breakfast for years before, so this would not be any issue.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree as well. the history of the property, was very similar. So I don't see any reason to be concerned, with that.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, it won't change the character of the area.
And I agree with the comments of its previous use as the Whitehall Bed and Breakfast for years. I think that one's met. Number 4, hazardous or disturbing, Mr. Acosta.
No, it's operated as that, in the past, so should not have any issue going forward.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree as well, and there's an established set of rules with, defined quiet time, so I don't see any issues with that.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
And given the enforcement of a rule about quiet time, I think that one's met. Number 5, this is about utilities, Mr. Acosta.
No issues at the functioning home at the moment, so no issue.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see any issues, there either.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, there's adequate facilities and services.
It's downtown. All those utilities and so forth are abundant, and they have been for years. That one's met in my view. Number 6, this is about requirements for public facilities and services, not detrimental to economic welfare, Mr. Acosta.
No, I believe just the opposite.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see anything there that, would indicate it's gonna create excessive requirements, or additional public expense. And I do think, that these types of businesses, do fit the comprehensive plan. So it is a benefit to the economy of our community.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, there's no detriment to economic welfare.
And I agree, it's just going to help the welfare of this town. Number 7, this is about the ones making detrimental things to any persons and so forth, excessive production of traffic noise and the like. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, see no issue at all.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see any issues either.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no issues, it's the owner's residence.
And I think that this has no issues along these lines like the previous application. I think that one's met. Number 8, this is the vehicular approaches, not interfere with traffic. Mr. Acosta.
No issue, as they've laid out, very adequate parking and on the actual street, again, no issues.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't think, a couple of cars is gonna interfere with traffic or, cause any, public safety issues.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no problem with this one.
And nor do I, because this one will be even fewer cars than the previous application. Number 9, destruction, loss, or damage of historic features, so forth. Mr. Acosta.
No, I see none whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't either. I see no issues.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no problem with that.
And I think that this will help preserve an extremely important historic feature of Madison, which was that Civil War hospital that was actually one of the most significant ones in the country's history at the time because of the fact that so few soldiers died there, unlike in those days. So I think that one is well met. I move we approve a conditional use permit for 1229 West Main Street for a period of 1 year for use as a short-term rental bed and breakfast, contingent upon receiving the rules and enforcing them, and contingent upon quiet time from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m.
Second.
And could we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, you have a conditional use for your short-term rental in your building. Now, we will consider the event using the same property, 1229 West Main, as an event space. So we will go through our conditional use findings of fact. This would be under number 723. So number one, do you agree this is in fact a condition? And we need you, since this is controversial, need your board members to make a statement of why you think or don't think that these conditions are met, and not just a simple yes, no. So number one on the list, do you think this is a conditional use, et cetera? Mr. Acosta,
Yeah, I mean, it is stated as such in the ordinance.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I think it does, meet the qualifications, for that ordinance.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yes, 723 is allowed in historic district with conditional use.
and I agree 723 is appropriate and we've used it before. Number two, do you agree this harmonious with, in accordance with the general objectives of the comprehensive plan or the zoning ordinance? Mr. Acosta,
Yeah, with the comprehensive plan, focused on, economic growth, tourism, those type of things, event spaces, fit well with that.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree as well. I think, the comprehensive plan is, pro-business, economic growth, and, I think it does fit in the zoning ordinance.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree, I think it is harmonious with the comprehensive plan since it is allowed in the schedule of district regulations.
and I might add to Mrs. Burkhart's noting that it's in the, as part of the comprehensive plan is that section 7. But the comprehensive plan is also historic preservation, and this greatly helps in that, so I think that one's met. Number 3, is this designed, constructed, maintained be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and such use will not change the essential character of the same area? Mr. Acosta.
I'll say again, I think it's unfortunate that the process has gotten to the point it is before this opposition was seen. If in fact,
Letter, Mark,
I'm sorry?
we didn't receive a letter.
Well, excuse me, sir, public comment time is closed,
Thank you, I appreciate that.
but thank you for your comment.
Sure thing. Sure thing, I don't care, I didn't get it.
And I understand it, and Tony, if you let me finish my statement, how about that?
Sure.
What I was gonna say was, it's unfortunate it got to this point, and I was gonna ask our staff to go back and review the initial, mailings that went out and verifications we received. So, I know you've gone through a lot of trouble for rezoning the area and those type of things. Now, with all that said, I can't ignore also the opposition there, the number of signatures, and those concerns. So I cannot say that this is it will not change the essence as you guys are expressing that it would.
Mr. Ferris,
So, to me, the application for the event, using the property for private events, I think it does change the essential character of the area. And it just feels like, because this board has been through similar applications before. And it feels like we're trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole. The difference to me in this application is the closeness in proximity to other residences, and just the lack of space that I think, is required for an event, location like this.
So do you think that one's met or not met?
No, I don't think this, I don't think this is met. Cause I think it changes the essential character of that neighborhood.
Mrs. Burkhart?
And I'll agree with a lot what Rick said. I don't think it's met either. I think it does change essential character. And I know I live downtown too, and I do have a privacy fence between my neighbor and my property. But, you know, I still feel responsibility if they were to have an event. Oh man, I gotta keep my dogs quiet, you know. I don't know if I could enjoy my yard as much knowing that a private event is going on next door. So, I hate to say that, cause I'm sure you would do it in a lovely way. But, you know, you gotta think about the neighbors and what they're used to in their neighborhood, and so, you know, I gotta respect that. So I think it would change the character.
And, our criterion, which we have to follow, because actually, these criterion are not made up by us, they're state law, and they're dictated in Indiana Code 39-7-4-900. So, when we have to consider the existing character of the area, there's been abundant testimony that Whitehall Bed and Breakfast, which functioned for years and years, never bothered anybody. The character of the area was residential. The Elks they do about everything inside. So, given the history, I would have to agree that that one is not met, that it would change the character of the area. Number 4. Do you agree this will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses? Mr. Acosta?
No, again, with the, signatures we see and the expressions that we've heard from the crowd, I believe that this, would tend to be disturbing to the existing neighbors.
So you think that one is not
That
met?
is not met.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I can't agree that it won't be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. And for some of the reasons that Mrs. Burkhart, explained in her previous comments.
So you think that one's not met? You think that one is not met?
That is not met.
Okay. Mrs. Burkhart?
Right, and just as Rick said and Mark said, I don't think that one's met either, just from prior testimony.
Hazardous or disturbing? Given the fact that it's been pretty quiet down there, except for, of course, for road traffic, I think that would disturb things. I am in agreement that that one's not met. Number 5, this is about utilities. Mr. Acosta?
I see no issue there. Again, it's a functioning home now, so obviously all those facilities and services are in place.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to believe that, those essential facilities and services, wouldn't continue to be provided.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree. I think there's adequate public facilities and services.
And the utilities and so forth are more than adequate down there. No problem. That one's met. Number 6, this is about excessive requirements, public expense and so forth. Mr. Acosta?
I see no issue with that.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be any excessive requirements, required at the public expense for this. So
Miss-
I agree with that one.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yeah, I see no detriment to the economic welfare.
And were it there, it wouldn't hurt the economic welfare and there would be no police or anything like that required. I think that particular one is met. Now this one, number 7, Do you agree this will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person's property or the general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors? Mr. Acosta.
I read this as being detrimental. I don't believe this will be detrimental, even with, I know the statements made about the potential noise. Not that it won't be disturbing, but reading this word as being detrimental and causing harm, I do not believe that will be an issue.
Mr. Ferris.
I was focusing on the same word. I don't believe it would, be detrimental.
So you think that one's met?
I do.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I think that one's met just from the explanation the two gentlemen before have given. Disturbing, yes, but detrimental, I don't think so.
Well, detrimental in the sense of disturbing persons or property, I think personally that could be an issue. I think that one fails, in my view. Number 8, vehicular approaches property, no interference with traffic. Mr. Acosta.
I don't think we meet that as well. Again, going back to testimony from some in the crowd, the number of people, the number of vehicles, it does sound like it could have an impact.
So you think that one
I would say
fails?
it's not met.
Okay. Mr. Ferris.
I think that one, if the occupancy and the number of parking spaces the applicant detailed for us is in fact, the right number, I don't think that that's gonna cause a big issue with traffic interference. So I do agree with that one.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I think that one is met. At any given time, the pickleballers, you have quite a few there, so you have quite a bit of traffic there. And if the Elks has an event, you still have quite a bit of traffic there. So I think this one's met.
And I personally think that one is met too, because it's similar to several streets in Madison that are come out onto Main Street. And there have been over the years things going on at Elks, so I personally think that one's met. Number 9, destruction, loss, or damage of natural, scenic, historic features. Mr. Acosta.
I don't see any issue with that one at all.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see any issues with number 9 causing any destruction or damage to natural or scenic features.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, I see no problem with that one.
And on the contrary, I see it as it would help to preserve that vitally important historic building down there. Board members, we've gone through our findings of fact. According to our rules, we have to vote one way or another. We have to vote to approve with possibly, if you agree with conditions, or we have to vote to deny. We can't just let the thing hang. And in addition, per our rules, if we find objections to this, and we had unanimous objections to criterion 3 and criterion 4, well, I guess that we could vote yes to do it, but if you have objections, really you should vote no, is more in line with the rules we adopted. So we can make a motion to approve this for a period of time with conditions. We can make a motion just to approve it, or we can make a motion to deny it. like to make a motion?
I'll move we, deny the permit for an event space.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll have a roll call, and in this case, ma'am, the public comment time is closed,
That's fine.
so you can have a seat. In this case, if we vote yes on this motion, it means we're voting against allowing it, just to be clear. And roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. So the motion to have an event space is denied, ma'am.
That's fine. Can I take a, 1 minute to comment off record?
Well, it's
If
gonna
it's
be on
not
the
me,
record because
it's-
you're in a public
Okay,
meeting, so
that's fine.
anything you say will be on the public
That's
record.
totally fine.
Yes, come up here.
For one, I completely am happy that any of the neighbors came out, because the last thing I'd wanna do is put a lot of money into this property for an event space and get going and then have a hostile neighborhood environment. So I am happy that you guys showed up. I do wish, for whatever reason, a letter wasn't received here and there that it would have been, so that we could have addressed it sooner. But I totally understand your concerns. And to you guys, thank you for working with me on it for 6 months. And honestly, thank you for doing your job, because I'm coming from Alaska County, Indiana, where the BZA is not listening to neighbors. They have the largest scale solar project coming in, over 30,000 acres in the country, largest in the country. And they have meetings where 30 to 50 people will come and express concern, and for whatever reason, they're still approving it. So honestly, thank you all, and I hope my home county can take after your example and actually listen to neighbors. So if anything, God told me I need one less thing on my plate tonight. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all
Thank
for
you.
your time. Thank you.
I think I grabbed your copy by mistake.
Oh.
Here's mine.
Okay.
Okay. Give me a minute to get my papers here. The next item on the agenda would have been Carrie Tucker, a conditional use permit for an in-home daycare, 2713 Basswood. But she has requested that we table this till our next regular meeting due to her conflicts of schedule. Therefore, I move we table this application BZCU-23-3 till our next regular meeting.
Second.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, pose no. This application is tabled. So moving on, the next one is Darrell Detmer, variance of use to allow expansion of business from adjoining property on the east for the manufacture of custom countertops. This is at 140 Clifty Drive, Zone General Business. So representative, come up here and give your name and address for the record and tell the board exactly why and what you want to do.
Basically, I'm Darrell Detmer, owner of Grand Brazil, and basically wanting to completely, or just do the same thing that we're doing at 170 Clifty Drive. And 20 years that I've been there, with the variance that we haven't had any complaints or any issues or noise problems, and in a lot of ways, having this extra property next door with all this other traffic subject coming up, it's actually gonna make it a lot easier getting semis in and out to unload, because right now we're having to stop traffic sometimes at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to back trucks in and out of the property I'm at. Where with the new property, they'll just be able to pull in and not be holding up traffic and at any time of day. So in a lot of ways, it's making the traffic better as well.
Did your business once own this, just for, be clear, this is to the property immediately to your west, where the restaurant, the Japanese restaurant and a store are? Is that's what's,
So the Yamamoto's there now, which was the Chinese restaurant, and I plan on still renewing their lease, so they'll still be there. At one time, I actually leased that center section for my office and showroom. And then when I moved my office and showroom over to where it is now, then the property owners at Gregory's rented that out for other different things, and then they had a church next door and this and that, which, at the same, they're gonna sell me the other property to the west of that as well, so, which I'm not changing the zoning or asking for a variance of that property at 180, so I'll be the neighbor on both sides. Not that it makes a lot of difference, I don't guess.
I had wondered, cause I saw a faded sign on the facade of that middle part.
Yeah, one time it had stickers across there where it said Grand Brazil, which then it faded that metal all out, so
So the restaurant's gonna stay,
the restaurant's gonna
you're,
stay.
you're just using the back part of the building?
So, that building's 15,000 square feet, the restaurant uses around 4, which would be nice if they were on the other side, but they're not, but I'm not gonna wanna make them move out either, cause they don't have anywhere to go. And so, I'm basically gonna put a garage door in the back of the building, leave the front the same as it is, cause I don't wanna screw up the value of the property by making it look like something other than what it is, a business area. So put a garage door in the back, pave that in behind there, and then basically just be coming from behind the building that I am now, in and out of the back of that building.
Okay.
So from the street view, I don't see anything's gonna change, other than I'm gonna take all that wasted sign off the front and make it look better.
But what you're asking for is a variance of use. And in 2002, we had it in our minutes, that's 20 years ago now. The zoning board, the BZA granted you a variance of use August 19, 2002. And apparently there was, so we have that. But we also have a variance of use, and I'm only speaking for myself. I do not like variances of use. And we have granted a few. We granted one to the new jail, and a jail is obviously a one-of-a-kind thing. It's very big. It's not gonna be on every street corner. Nobody else is gonna come before this board wanting a variance of use to put in a second jail. The previous, the 1229 West Main, she had requested a variance of use, but I and the board urged her to go to city council and ask for what amounted to spot zoning, because we figured that that was better than granting a variance of use. A variance of use, all the uses are prescribed by city council. They're in section 7, all those numbers and things. When a board like this grants a variance of use, in my view, I'm only speaking for myself, board members, in my view, that is something that just frankly shouldn't be done. The lawmakers are supposed to decide what uses go in what zoning district. And I understand that on your application, and I appreciate your honesty, that you're trying to go this route so that possibly someday you may have to, or want to, or whatever, sell that property. And of course, I also understand there is an alternative that you can do, which is to join those properties together as one property. So board members, in my mind, I personally am so opposed to variance of use that I would prefer that if there is an alternative, the alternative be used, like was used with 1229 West Main. The alternative was spot zoning, and in my view, that was appropriate because that building is so historically important in Madison, being where the surgeons were in the Civil War hospital. So if you see my point, board members, that's what concerns me. The criterion in our zoning ordinance Well, actually, I can read it. Oops. Page. Wrong ordinance, flood ordinance. Not relevant. Page 115, section 1116C. Shall approve or deny variances of use. Number 3, the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property. Number 4, strict application constitutes an unnecessary hardship. In addition, 1134, 4D. Let's see here, 1134. Variance of use, 1133. It's not a, well, there is an addition in our rules that this does not confer a special privilege upon the property owner that other people in the district do not enjoy. So, while I have no issues whatsoever with your using that building, the only issue I personally have, for the reasons I've outlined, is variance of use. So I think this is a perfectly good use, but on the other hand, we also have 20 years ago, a previous board granted him a variance of use. So we have these two conflicting things. 20 years ago, variance of use granted. Today, similar one for same business. And it also concerns me that if we set a precedent, I know we go on a case-by-case basis, and therefore we don't necessarily set precedents. And I also realize that 20 years ago, some long ago previous board approving a variance of use is not likely to come up very often in this town. So that's what I wrestle with, board members. Staff or our attorney, if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free.
I don't see any issue under the specific circumstances to use the variance of use. It wouldn't be in here if it wasn't something that could be done. I understand your struggle with the public policy of a variance of use, but the ordinance allows it. In reviewing the outline of the findings that have to be made by the board, I think that the board could find in either direction, frankly, based on his application. You also have a previous application with a neighboring property where it was granted. And the application isn't calling for the entire property to be converted to this use. It's a rear
So why
spot.
isn't it just for a variance? Why variance of use? What's the differential between those two?
Well, there's different types of variances. That's the first problem.
So may explain the difference of just trying for a variance versus trying for a variance of use.
So the variance of use is for a specific use. And that's what this exact application calls for. This use is not something that's allowed in that specific zoning classification.
So if you were saying build steel trailers or something besides making countertops,
Yeah,
it would be other than that specific use.
right.
But my use will only be for countertop reasons. If later on I had a different business, then it wouldn't meet the criteria of that use.
And you're not gonna have a lot of individuals asking for this type of use, I mean, at least I'm sure Daryl doesn't hope that there are any.
I think
You never know,
it
right?
merit that the previous variance that you received were for you to do that in that
At the
area.
170 Clifty Drive, right, and I, for the record, I mean, I haven't had any complaints, or there's not a noise problem, or dust, or, it's all,
My point is, if you were looking to operate at that time on both those properties, you would assume the same variance would have been granted.
oh,
You know, I mean,
yeah, I don't see why not, but
Yeah.
you never
And
know,
I would
right?
venture to guess, most people aren't even gonna know that you're there.
They don't, I mean, I've hired people before and they thought, they didn't even know I was there and had no idea what's involved in all that and how much inventory's there and the whole, how much business we actually do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been lucky actually, so.
I do agree with Mr. Baldwin's point about the use of the variance of use clause. I think it's for a special situation, but again, I think the preceding variance being granted, I think, helps support that.
You also have a business that's been 20 years. It's
Yeah.
not a new, somebody that we don't,
It's not a new venture
yeah.
now, so.
Yeah, you know what to expect. I mean, it's not, and I'm not, any property that I have bought in the past around town, I've always fixed it up for the better. I'm not gonna pile a bunch of junk around out front and all that stuff. I'm not interested in that look.
Well, I think that it's not in a residential district like from before. This is a business district, and though it's not just for that use, it still is a business district that he's gonna be in anyway.
Any other comments, board members, questions? Like I say, I have no problem with what you're doing. I think it's great. Glad you're expanding.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like Lowe's in another way too. It is retail in a point where the customer comes in and
Yeah.
they shop and they pick their slabs, and in some ways, it's not any different in a restaurant. After they've selected everything, you make them the product.
Well, I don't think in reality, it's not heavy manufacturing.
No, I don't
Nothing
think
like
so
that.
either. I think
So,
that there's
yeah.
something there that needs to be looked at if they ever redo the zoning as well. I don't see that it's an M2 business.
Sure.
And it's just, maybe if you was at a rock quarry somewhere, a Hanson quarry or something, then that's a whole different thing. But in the 80s or 90s when that ordinance was written, I don't think they had granite countertops probably in mind.
You would have been under the 1981 ordinance.
Yeah, there probably wasn't that much granite countertops going on, so
Yeah, well, may not even been a
if
thing.
you ever do a new ordinance, or whoever does that, they probably ought to relook at that one specific thing. But I'm hoping I don't ever have to move. That's the other point, to have to relocate. The expense, and it's just, would be 2 or 3 times more in the delays and.
Board members, anything else?
I think we'll move forward with that.
Okay, would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposal? Okay, thank you, sir. You can sit down. Variance of use. I want to make sure I have the correct one here. Staff, I think, let's see.
It should be 5, section 1133.
Right, section 1133. I'll just read it off that just to make sure I have the right one,
Okay.
because we've had a few changes. Criterion, number 1. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Mr. Acosta.
I see that in no way is it gonna be injurious.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it would be either.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Right, I see no problem with that one.
And me, certainly there is no problem to that. This will be beneficial to the general welfare. Number 2, use and value of the area adjacent to the property will be affected in an adverse manner. Mr. Acosta.
No, I think not. I think if anything, as Mr. Detmer explained, various properties, improve those areas as opposed to let them run down.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be a neighbor to himself, and he's already got existing operations, next door anyway, so I don't think there's gonna be any, adverse effect to the neighborhood.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I see no adverse effect.
And I think Mr. Ferris put it very well. I see no adverse effect, and we have certainly had no testimony along that line. Number 3, need for variance arises from something peculiar to the property involved. Mr. Acosta.
Just the, existing zoning as it is today requires the variance of use.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I also agree with that comment.
And peculiarities, the peculiarity here, the big one is that 20 years ago, a previous board granted a variance of use for a business which is going to be doing exactly the same thing. And our legal department sees no particular problems here. I cannot imagine there will be very many other things arise where there have been 20 years of operation under a previous board's variance of use granting, so I think that that one's met. Number 4, constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to this property. Mr. Acosta.
Obviously, the unnecessary hardship would be simply could not use the property for such without the variance.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well, and I think, it's an existing, business that's trying to expand. And literal enforcement would prevent, business expansion, and I think that plays into our comprehensive plan of pro-business and economic growth.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Right, I agree with those 2 prior comments.
The unnecessary hardship, well, there is a possibility you'd have to go and have the properties joined together and necessary legal stuff. But once again, we go back to 20 years ago, a previous BZA granted a variance of use. This is the same company, the same business, the same manufacturing, taken interference of traffic off Clifty Drive, so I think that one is met. Number 5, does not interfere substantially with comprehensive plan. Mr. Acosta.
Again, I think it benefits the comprehensive plan, does not impact it negatively at all.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, as I stated earlier, I think it fits in with the comprehensive plan.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with that comment, fits with the comprehensive plan.
And in the sense that the comprehensive plan wants business, wants people to be able to operate, I think that that one's well met. But we've gone through our findings of fact. We'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we approve this, variance of use.
Second.
We have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, sir, you have your variance of use for your property. We wish you well. Next on the agenda, Mark Viterna, 526 Walnut Street, variance from development standards for setbacks, desires to renovate home, add a second story. Footprint will not change, and he doesn't meet the current setbacks. Yes, sir, if you could give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Mark Viterna, 526 Walnut.
And could you explain the problem you've got here? And
Yeah,
is that-
so we purchased this property back in December, and it's in pretty rough shape, but we think that we can save it. That's our intent. It's historically significant. It's in the Georgetown neighborhood. We don't want to see it meet the same fate as the one next to it. It's still very much able to be salvaged. However, in order to really continue work on the property, I believe that it's in everyone's best interest that we go ahead and get a variance for development standards in place, because I was advised by the planning department that would probably be best, even though we're not changing the physical footprint. Now, we're not technically adding a second story. The second story was there, but we are going to be elevating the height by a few feet to make it more of a livable space instead of the very aggressive slope that was back there that was just housing the mechanicals at that point. So we're wanting to make that more of a livable space. So it will increase the size of the wall height by a few feet on that back end, but the actual footprint, it won't go in any direction towards any of the neighbors and any additional distance. And I've outlined kind of where it sits now, and that's how we inherited the property. And to my knowledge, no variance to development standards was ever applied for, and we just want to make sure that we're setting things correct and doing things correctly. So, and I'm sure Joe is a much smarter person than I am. He's been kind of helping with this, so if there's anything he needs to add on that, he can feel free to do so.
You're in the same problems that almost everybody downtown runs into. These buildings were built in the 19th century when nobody thought about this stuff. So you're planning to do everything on the existing foundation and footprint.
Yes, sir.
And it says here, current lot line is 6 inches, current south lot line is 6 inches. Similar to so many properties downtown, they were built right up to the lot line, and it's nothing new.
They do have 3 foot on the east.
You're legal on the east, wow. Well, board members, do you have any questions, comments?
You've got a tall task ahead of you in that area.
It's very tall. We hope, we're fingers crossed, we're gonna
Right.
apply for PACE next month.
Right, because between you and the property next to you, I mean, that is really gonna change that neighborhood, that block.
We
It
hope
really
so.
is.
It's very up and coming,
Yeah.
so we're very
It really
excited.
is.
Yeah.
So good for you.
So how many feet do you expect to add to that second?
Well, again, the footprint's not gonna change, but by elevating that really aggressive slope back there, we're looking to probably gain another 300 square feet of additional living space. So originally it was 995, and we hope with these additions we can push closer to 1,300, which should help, especially because we're gonna make it a long-term rental, hopefully, because I think there's quite a bit of demand. There's not a lot of availability for, we have plenty of Airbnbs, but not a lot of long-term rentals, and hopefully that'll, that extra square footage will open up to more families that might have larger family member, larger number of members in their family. So that's another reason why we wanted to go up, and since we don't have any room side to side, we can expand some square footage and just a way to add a little bit more value to that street.
But even when you do go up, it still will be in line with many of the houses in the area, is that correct?
Oh, yes, yeah, it's, just a typical federal style, I
Right.
believe. I'm not a historic expert, but.
Yeah, so I don't think it's anything that's gonna stick out as different.
No, the rear of the building is, well, actually, I say that now that the building next to it has been taken down, and it's a little bit more visible, but, with us renovating it, it's gonna be a lot better looking than what it was.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, when it's all said and done.
Any other questions, comments, board members? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposal? Okay, you can sit down, sir, thank you. We will go through our findings of fact. This is a variance from developmental standards. Requesting variance from the 3-foot lot lines, essentially. Number 1, will this be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, etc.? Mr. Acosta.
No, not at all. It's renovating a distressed property, which would certainly benefit the area.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I think it'll improve, all of those things in the community.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I think it's a benefit to all those in the community.
It's definitely a benefit to Walnut Street. That one's met. Number 2, this is the use and value of adjacent properties be adversely affected. Mr. Acosta.
No, I have the opposite effect.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree, it'll have nothing but a positive impact on Walnut Street.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
And the proposal is to use the same footprint that's been there for a long time and just improve the neighborhood. I think that one's met. Number 3, this is practical difficulties, Mr. Acosta.
Well, without this, the house couldn't exist as it is. It's cleaning up a similar situation we see with so many houses and properties downtown.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree. We see many applications like this one, and, you know, I applaud the applicant for, trying to abide by the current standards.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with the prior comments.
The strict application of the zoning ordinance would require him to re-pour the foundation and have about an 11-foot wide house, which is absurd. So I think this is very obvious practical difficulties. I think that one's met. Well, we've gone through our findings of fact. We have a motion.
I move we accept the variance for development standards.
Second.
I think we have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. We wish you well, sir.
Good luck.
Next on the agenda, Crystal Pavey, a conditional use permit for a proposed gas station with a convenience store and restaurant with a drive-through, 3910 North Michigan Road, M1. So, yes, sir, if you'd come up and speak to this board, if you'd introduce yourself again.
My
for
name
the
is
record.
Tim Ross. I'm up here representing Crystal and Steve Pavey. This is Crystal. Do you want my address or?
Oh, you gave it in the previous meeting, so I think that's adequate. So if you could explain to the board, this board, I know you explained it all in the last board, I was in that meeting. But if you could explain again exactly what you want to do and your proposals and everything, similar to what you did last time.
Okay. Crystal owns 20-some acres through there. Part of it's wetlands, part of it's not. Obviously where the old Buchanan concrete plant used to be. The older people remember that. So what they're wanting to do is they're going to subdivide an area off there where pretty much where the concrete plant used to be, so we are not touching the wetlands. And what they want to do is they want to develop this into it's a privately owned gas station. Will be for the public. It'll be labeled as BP, where there'll be a gasoline fueling island out front with a convenience store and a restaurant in the end of it with a drive-through, so they'll be able to sell food such as that, and they'll have a diesel island out back. It's made to be able to handle a couple of trucks at a time, just to pick up the traffic, because there is a lot of truck traffic from manufacturing and stuff there that most of that, you're not gonna pick it all up, but you're gonna pick a little bit of it up, because a lot of these semis and stuff coming in have set places that they're told by their freight company where they buy their fuel. So some of the privately stuff they'll be able to pick up, but we're gonna have 5 gas islands out front, 2 fueling islands in the back with a nice size C-store. We do have, if you need elevation pictures of it, we can send them to you. It's a very upscale building. We're not putting in a cheap pole barn. It's gonna be it's nice, it's pleasant to the eyes, and what we're gonna do is, our plans are to go in there and develop that and turn that into a nice space. Now, we have no plans for overnight truck parking, things like that. What we're trying to do is, they're gonna have, hours are gonna be
5 AM to 9 PM.
5 to 9.
Of course, you can get fuel after hours.
Yeah, you could get fuel after hours, a lot of your transport, so they don't mess with the flow of the vehicles. May drop fuel of a night, but they're not out there doing a lot of beating and banging and stuff like that. We will set it up where the pumps can be used 24 hours, even though the store may be closed. That's the new thing now. Everybody's got them set up where you can do that. The state passed that a few years ago where you're allowed to do that. The facility is gonna be, well-maintained. And, we're just trying to improve the facility. Right now, they've owned it since 2016 or 17. And the plans are, like I said, just develop it, turn it into a nice facility. And, right now it's, I've caught people in there, they're using it for a trash dump and other things. We're having to try to keep that stuff cleaned up and just trying to improve the facility and add something to Madison. Madison that will be the first gas station that you actually come into, coming from the north for about 17, 18 miles. If you're coming up from the south on 421, basically you've got the one down here in lower Madison that's a little hard for everybody to get into. And then you've got like the BP and the Sunoco across the bridge. So it's a nice location for them. The traffic flow that they're gonna pick up, I know there's some other gas stations being built here in town over by Arby's. And then on out towards Hanover, it's a totally different traffic flow than what we're picking up there. A lot of those people are going to those factories and they're coming in from, up north Canaan, different places like that. So we feel like we can provide a service for the area and improve the facility and make it really nice.
So do you own the facilities at Westport and Milroy? Okay.
I actually built Westport, so, and they're in the process of building a brand new one at Milroy. We did all the fueling there, and they're putting up a new building right now at Milroy. They've started on it.
Well, I stop in both locations frequently. You guys have always done a good job maintaining the appearance of your facilities, and I like that you got Fago Pop.
Well, Milroy has a temporary building up right now, but they're putting up it's about 4,500 square foot facility right now, a brand new facility. So
Yeah.
it's in the process of being built right now.
So will there be landscaping around it? I know it's 100 feet away from residential, but will there be landscaping to designate where the gas station stops, or?
There'll be light landscaping around the perimeters, naturally, because, they still own property all around it for the most part. There is one other piece of property that they will be adjoining, that's right next to them. It's like 3/4 of an acre or acre piece of property. There is gonna be a buffer there between those. The buffer out front, the grassy area, there's utilities and stuff in there, so we've gotta maintain a pretty good sized buffer in there. So there's room for some nice landscaping up there. Now, the actual ditch line itself, just the narrow ditch, is considered as wetlands. Why anybody put a ditch as wetlands, I have no idea. But you're talking a 2-foot wide ditch, but other than that, everything will be nicely landscaped out front. Lighting, the way a lot of people get concerned with gas station lighting anymore, afraid it's gonna light their place up. The way that we're set up now, we'll turn in a site plan to the lighting manufacturers, and they'll provide us lights, and they're designed to put the light on the property, but not go off the property. So that's the way, and we'll actually get a plan that we'll submit when we submit the building plan. We'll show the lighting calculations to show that it's not making it off the property, and we'll be installing to that effect.
So will everything be set up at once, like gas station, convenience store, and restaurant, they're all coming at one time, or is it different phases?
Nope, it's all coming at one time. When they start doing this, it'll all be built in one time and be completed.
What's the expected occupancy of the restaurant?
Jim, what did we have that at?
The exact size. My name is Jim Bertram. I'm with Rizzo Engineering. We're here in Meadow Lane up on top of the hill, Madison. The facility will have a small restaurant. I mean, it's got a drive-through, so it won't be a huge.
Inside seating is very minimal.
About eight, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 8 places.
So, I mean, are you talking like a Subway, Hardee's, a Burger King, or
You're
are you talking
more,
about
you're
like a,
okay, like the Subway up on Upper Madison.
Yeah.
Seats very minimal people. You're talking about a seating that's probably that or less, is what we're
So
looking at.
just designed more for the drive-through traffic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's designed more in and out, in and out.
The only concern I have is truck traffic, because you'll have diesel pumps, of course, diesel. Probably mostly would go to pickup trucks and straight trucks like that, not very big. Semis. Or do you plan on having any kind of a contract with trucking companies where they'll refuel there, so you might conceivably have, all I can see is 10 semis lined up.
They're providing a diesel island to pick up some of the over-the-road semis that is coming into some of the factories. The majority of the people that they're gonna pick up is your privateers. Because if that delivery truck is being brought in by a large delivery company, either A, they've got their own pumps, or they've got a preset established price with the Love's, the Flying J, places like that, where they're using ComCheck. It's a whole different animal. So are they gonna pick up some truck business? Absolutely. Are you gonna see 10, 12 truck lines up at this place? No. You're gonna see a couple of trucks in there, then you may not see any in there for an hour or two, then you might see one truck. Nobody knows exactly what that's gonna be, but to see 10 to 12 trucks lined up at this facility, you're just not gonna see it. Now, you might see where somebody's went over to Nucor and dropped off a load or picked up a load. He's gonna come over, he's gonna grab him some fuel, he can fuel up. But for trucks to be sitting there running through there all night long, sitting there idling, sleeping there, we're not building this facility for trucks to sit there and idle all night long. If on the layout, there was a site plan that we provided, on the layout, the diesel islands actually go behind the building. Now, the reason for that, there's a house to the south side. The reason for putting that diesel island to the back is if there was a truck back there fueling, or they were idling to get their fuel, now that put them more towards the back side of the building, so we could deaden some of the sound before it got over towards the house. If we'd have put the original diesel island on the south end of that building, there would have been a lot more noise, but we haven't done that. We've moved it around behind the building. The other thing we put it back there for is we've only got so far we can go back because of that wetlands. So once you put them diesel islands in the back, there is a pass around back there, but it's not deep enough for trucks to back in before you get into the wetlands, and we can't disturb that. So I'm not gonna tell you that a guy is not gonna grab a load at Nucor at 11 o'clock and pull over to the side after the place is closed and sleep for 2 or 3 hours and hit the road, because he's on his time limit of his CDLs. But that's not what it's designed to do, and we're gonna have it placarded and signage that we don't want, no overnight stays. So this place is not gonna become a truck stop. If it was a truck stop, we'd need a lot more islands. It's just, and it's gonna do, the majority of the diesel there is gonna pick up the farm trucks with the gooseneck, the stuff like that. That's what we're gonna pick up. The other thing that we're gonna see a lot of, they're putting in a non-alcohol fuel. So we're gonna see a lot more of the boaters coming south, people, lawnmowers, stuff like that are gonna be coming in there. Rather than the closest place to get non-alcohol fuel is Osgood, Indiana. Well, we're gonna have that here in Madison now. So that is, we're mainly going after the automotive people. That's why we're putting in 5 islands out front, where you're not gonna get a big bunch of noise. But we are gonna pick up some semi-traffic, and when we do that, that will be behind the building. Are they gonna be pumping 200,000 gallon a month in diesel trucks? No, they're not. They're not gonna be doing that kind of diesel business. It's just, you're just not gonna see that many in there.
So
Just-
go ahead, go ahead.
Just so we're clear, the, property's not gonna be used as a substation for any carriers.
No.
And the reason I ask is because the Fuel Mart over at Austin is one of the smallest, fueling stations that I send my trucks to. Coke has anywhere from 4 to 6 trailers parked on that property at any given time.
I'm getting ready to redo that place.
So, you know, just because of the size, doesn't mean that you can't fit
I just
trucks
was,
in there.
I just was over at that place a week and a half ago, cause I'm supposed to rebuild it too.
Yep.
And that's actually getting a new C-store and everything, that's not out yet, but that particular lot is larger than the lot that we're getting ready to develop here. We just do not have the room. If you look at the parking spots, we do not have the room to spot and leave trucks over there and leave trailers. We don't have it. You're talking when I was over there a week and a half ago, compared to what these guys are getting ready to develop, you're talking a lot that's half again bigger. So they have the room to spot trailers. We do not have the room to spot trailers the way we're laying it out. The only thing that we have put on that south side of the building is where we're putting the fuel tanks. And, you know, I've got a regulation that I have to stay on the property line, and we're gonna do that. The reason for that is you cannot park over the top of the underground storage tanks. That's a non-parking area. So therefore, we're gonna put the tanks over there, so when the transport drops, he's there 30 to 40 minutes, then he's out of there. Then nobody else could park there because we can't block the tanks in case there's another load coming in. So that's definitely a no parking area towards that residential property there to the south. So if you did get somebody that might park in a parking spot, it's after they come out of the diesel island and make the loop, and they may be on the north side, but they will not be able to park on the south side over the fuel tanks.
So was there a study done that says, hey, we need this is a needed thing? I mean, why was that property chosen there?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, sometimes you go by traffic counts, sometimes you go by gut feelings. And I live here, I live just north of Madison, in between Versailles and Madison. And I seen the property come available, and I told them about it because they operate facilities good, they keep them clean, and I build them, but I don't own them, because it's how do you own them and then work for the people that you build for? I just kind of a conflict of interest. And I seen it come available, and I told them, and I said, that right there would be a dynamite site. And when BP come and done their studies and took a look at it, they agreed that it would be great. Now, one of the myths is with gas stations today, the old gas stations, you could get one that was doing 200,000 gallon a month. That's big numbers. Today, you're lucky to get a gas station that's doing 100 to 120 for a big gas station, because there's so much competition. So when you do that, the traffic count goes down quite a bit. Where you make your money, I'm sorry, is inside Cokes, Twinkies, and Ho-Hos. You don't make your money off the fuel.
There you go.
The fuel,
Fago.
I'm sorry, everybody thinks it's a big money gain. Fuel is more of a loss leader to get you inside. And they call them convenience stores for a reason. They're not the cheapest, but they're there for convenience. And that I do believe in that area, it will be beneficial to the factories, to the people coming in and out of there. It's gonna be beneficial, obviously, to the babies, but it's gonna be beneficial to people. There's people in the trailer park that are walking up that dark road all the time that I have physically almost hit myself, because why somebody in the middle of the night wants to wear black into town and walk along the edge of the road, I have no clue. But how many times have you guys come up there and people been walking at the edge of that road? Where now those people have got, they're gonna go pick up their stuff, so they're obviously gonna walk catty-cornered across and come over to there, and I think that's gonna be a safer one than walking all the way up and going to Walmart. So, I just think it's gonna be a beneficial thing. They maintain their facilities and they take care of them, and that's one thing that they do.
Any other questions, board members?
We can provide you with elevation pictures if you would like to see them. This is not a pole barn, this is very upscale, very nice building that's been, and it'll definitely bring some revenue to the city of Madison.
So you guys went before the plan commission right before this meeting, right?
Yes,
And what's the status of that?
they passed everything we didn't have no issues there.
Yeah, that meeting was mainly about setbacks.
Yes.
Well, board members, if you have no more questions, if somebody from the audience back here would like to speak, gentlemen, ma'am, you can sit down. And if you give your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Devin Vest. My address is 3786 North Michigan Road. It's the property they're actually talking about that's to the south a little bit. It's Crystal's property, kind of pretty much goes completely around mine. I do have, some concerns with the gas station, convenience store, whatever you want to call it, being built there. Personally for me, I have 7 kids, going from the age of 9 all the way down to a newborn. So to me, the thought of more traffic coming in, fumes from trucks coming in, just anything like that. And then you have more people. To me, I moved out to that area because it was a country setting. I didn't have to worry about pretty much neighbors. My closest neighbors, I don't know, probably 80 yards or more. Well, maybe not that much, but still, I have one neighbor, and then, other than that, I have nothing. So now you're introducing all this traffic. Now in my head, I have more people that I have to worry about, coming around and having more traffic around my kids. That pretty much, I'm gonna have to put a privacy fence up if I want to feel even more safe about my kids, safety with, strangers coming in and out, trucks coming in and out. One thing I would like to say is, they say there's gonna be no trucks staying overnight. Personally, I live right next door. There's a truck there now, there's another truck there. There's been multiple other trucks in and out that sleep there overnight, leave their engines running. There's been vehicles over there. I personally have had to go and tell them, like, hey, you guys need to go. And I mean, you know what they're doing when they both pull up, they hand something out their window, and they're on their way. You know what it is. It got to a point actually that I had to talk with Officer Finnegan. He's kind of a family friend, and I've asked him, hey man, if there's any way you could patrol this area whenever you get a chance. I know, you're probably pretty busy, but if you could patrol this area. I've had 2 times my house has been vandalized. I've had people walking in my backyard that have been parked over there, that I've had to chase off. I've had gunshots coming from over there before. Couldn't ever figure out where they were. They left before I could even get out of my house. The noise thing's another issue for me. If it's 24/7, even if you don't have that many trucks, but you do have trucks coming in 24/7, I hear every bit of traffic that comes on that road. I hear the factory, Madison Precision, that's way across the road. I hear Nucor, which I personally work at, that's even farther away from me. I can hear tubes falling over there if they drop a bundle outside of scrap at night. I can hear all of this in my front room, my bedroom, my garage, any of that. So my biggest concern is, the lighting was an issue until the engineer did say that the new design that points it down, which I do, that is something that I like to hear that, I'm not gonna have to worry about, the side that gas station is gonna be, the side of my house that the gas station is closest to. I have 4 kids on that side of the house. I have 2 kids in one bedroom and 2 kids in another bedroom. So, that was gonna be a big issue, is noise. And then, obviously, the lights. Fumes is another issue. I'm really concerned with all of that. I do understand, like, what they're saying as far as, there's nothing on that side of town. But to me, it's a 2-minute drive. From my work to a gas station down the road at Circle K, I get there in 2 minutes. Maybe 3, if, you know, there's traffic, 2 minutes usually, and that's the speed limit. It's just, to me, it's an unnecessary thing. You know, I don't understand, like the gentleman just said, gas isn't even the moneymaker, so why even put gas there? If there's gas stations down the road. In Madison alone, you have a Speedway, 3 Circle K's, you have a, what is it, it's changed so much, I think it's Jazzy's now, which is a little bit down the road. So I just feel like in that area, it's just not a, you know, a necessity for it to have. You know, I personally live right there, and I'm perfectly fine driving 2 minutes down the road to get a Polar Pop, to get gas, to get whatever I might need. You know, one of the things that I'm concerned about as well is the upkeep. It was bought in 2017, and the upkeep right now, nothing against Crystal. We actually talked outside, and she seems like a wonderful person. She told me that, you know, she's going to try to do her, you know, hardest to keep it, if it does go through, to keep it looking the best, and, you know, she doesn't want any issues, and we've never had any issues, and it's just like, you know, with kids, it's a big concern. I feel like it's nothing that really needs to be there. I just personally don't think that it's a good idea to put there. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that you're just creating, to me, a more of a problem than anything. You know, they live in Milroy, Indiana. So my concern is, who's going to be able to manage that, to tell those truck drivers, no, you're not staying here? Are they going to have someone go out there every time? Are they going to be able to guarantee me that they're not going to have diesel trucks running out there all the time? Or that they're not going to have cars out there running 24/7? It's just, there's a lot of concerns that I feel like it's just not a good place to put a convenience store or a gas station. To me, it's just, it's not a good area. Another concern was Crystal said that the cards did get sent out, but for some reason I never received one. Nucor never received one that I know of. There was 2 people, Tandy's, which owns the farm, on that would be I'm pretty sure the east side of, on the opposite side of 421, and then a family friend, which is Rick Schaefer. He owns the billboards that on the corner of Michigan Road and 421. He's actually one that told me about it at 6 o'clock today, so I didn't even know anything about it. I knew that she had been in talks, because I had talked to her about buying some of the property, just to have more property for my kids, and she had said something about putting a gas station, but, you know, when you bought it in 2017, and I bought my house in 2020, and nothing's happened, and then now it's 2023, you don't, you know, and then you're finally hearing about it. I honestly thought it was a joke at first, but I just, you know, my concerns is my kids' safety, the fumes, everything like that, noise, you know, it's just, it's a concern of mine.
So where you live, what's the zoning where you live, your property, do you know?
I actually, I don't have that,
Joe, do you know
Zone light manufacturing.
where his property is, his own light manufacturing?
I was at, it's a brick house, Bedford stone house, and I don't know exactly what I will agree that it is a swamp. You know, if it rains quite a bit, you do have, you know, it holds some water, and, but as far as the zoning, you know, I honestly don't know what it is.
You say his house is in M1,
Yes.
so I presume his house was built a long, long time ago,
1954.
before the 66 zoning ordinance. I can see that dilemma. Is that all you
Yeah, that's
made your
all
point
I have.
well?
And whatever happens, I don't want you to think that I, you know, ain't gonna like you or nothing. I do have one more question. As far as, you know, the property lines, I see that they're marked. How close is the actual parking lot or the building itself going to be close to that property line?
Oh, it's quite a ways off. We could show you.
If you could come up,
Yeah, it's on the plan. Can I say one more thing?
Sure, you can say, but come up to the podium, please, sir, for our,
One of the things, just, you can stand.
Oh, okay.
One of the things, just so you know, and Jim was also gonna say something, just so you know, right now, you are having a lot of parking problems and traffic problems and people over there, and I've caught people dumping there. I caught somebody there about a year ago, and I made them load their truck back up.
That was one of my biggest concerns, is someone dumped a mattress in box spring.
Well, and here's the thing, yes, they're gonna be up here all the time now, but they can't monitor it every day. But one of the things that I wanted to set you at ease, once you turn this into a lit gas station, once you turn it in to a well-maintained where it's, the garbage and stuff's being dumped, that being used as a landfill's gonna stop.
Okay.
Because they can't get in and out of there, without getting caught.
Yeah.
I caught a guy, like I said, about a year ago, unloading to pick up two guys, and I pulled up, leaned up against the side of the truck, and I said, do you guys know who owns this property? And they said, no. I said, well, I do, and they didn't give you permission to dump here. So start loading your truck up before I call the police.
Well, that was one of the biggest issues is, like I said, there's been multiple vehicles over there. And, at first, they're like, I'd ask them to leave, and then they'd be like, well, do you own this property? No, I own right there, and I don't want you here. And then they would be like, well, if you don't own it, you can't ask me to leave. So then it's kind of one of those things where I was like, yeah, I do, so leave, go. Like, I have kids, I don't want you over here, go.
Well, one of the things that's gonna help, once you get this built, because of the people going in and out, we're gonna stop a lot of the silliness. We're gonna stop the dumping. We're gonna stop the illegal parking over there, because they do all the time. Because right now, everybody thinks it's just a vacant lot, it's just a facility, it's just the public facility. So when we get done with it, it's gonna be well lit, stuff like that, it's gonna deter the people from doing that. The other thing about your fumes and stuff, the way we're set up with underground storage tanks now, we can't just drop the fuel and it flow out into the air. Because whenever you're dropping liquid into a tank, you have to put the exhaust and push it out. So now, all the transports in the trucks are designed that when we couple up to the tank, they'll couple up with two hoses. They're dropping fuel in and pulling the vapors back up into the truck as they go. The vent lines are only there as a pressure relief on the tank. So that way they don't build up pressure. So as far as fumes and stuff, and then the other thing, if there's a barrier issue, I don't think they would have a problem putting a fence up across there by your property. Now, naturally, you're not gonna wanna run it all the way to the edge of the road, but I don't think they would have a problem putting a privacy fence up at, starting close to the setback and moving that back to the corner of your property to put a barrier, which, I don't think they're gonna freak out and fret about anything like that. So, we're not trying to do anything to drop the value of your property or make anything detrimental to you or your kids. We're only wanting to try to improve it. And I actually think that you're gonna be a lot safer when we get this put in there than what you are right now, because you don't know who's parking in there right now.
No, I literally have to run people off constantly.
And I ran people off from there, and I think once you get it, it's an established facility where people are coming in and out, we're gonna deter a lot of that. We're also gonna have video cameras and stuff like that to stop a lot of this stuff from happening. And then Jim wanted to say something, but I just wanted to say something, and I respect what you said, I really do.
Thank you.
To answer your question, the building's 135 feet from the property.
Did you wanna see that?
And then also there'll be green space
Is there
in
stuff
between
clean?
of about
Do
35.
they keep their stuff?
Because this part will be buried around, and this will be with.
And they have
So
to go
this
off.
is
Let's
small
say
portion.
You might get free pick.
So this will be green, and then we'll say that we do come to terms, we could do a good barrier reiterate that the property that he is living on is owned light manufacturing, so it is possible and feasible for a manufacturing company to come in and buy the ground too, so it's a balancing act. I don't think we're deterring anything by putting in a gas station versus, a large plant or manufacturing.
Yeah, I think we hear your concerns, but it is nice that you'll be able to work with him and help him ease his fears. Does that make you feel a little bit better that they're able to do that? I think your wife wants to say something.
Would your wife like to say something?
Well, I
Come
don't
up to
want
the
her to.
podium.
She's a little bit more stern than I am.
I'm a mother. I think my only concern is like right now, we know that none of our neighbors are sex offenders or anything like that, but you put a gas station there, my kids playing in the backyard, even the front yard, and people already walk down the highway, but causing more traffic flow for people to walk to the gas station pretty much through our yard because it's gonna be on the same side of the road. It really, it doesn't, it's not gonna make me feel better to have one fence to where my kids aren't gonna be fenced in. People are still gonna be able to see my kids in the backyard playing, and it just really does scare me because I'm not sure what kind of people are gonna be walking to the gas station, where, as I said before, we didn't have anybody walking to a gas station on our side of the road, kind of in the ditch of our front yard. So that doesn't put my mind at ease having one fence, I'm sorry.
You do have people walking, like stated before, but it seems like for some reason, they like to walk at midnight in all black clothes, and you can't see them. But during the day, you really don't have anyone walking. Like I said, for some reason, I guess the common sense to them is walk at night in black clothes. But other than that, we don't really see, too many people as far as walking or.
Not yet.
Okay,
That would be.
Good German Shepherd
That
would
would be
take
our-
care of some of that.
Hey, we
Okay.
can't take care of a dog. With 7 kids, we barely have enough time. We wouldn't have time for a dog.
well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, board members?
No.
I do have one question for, the builders. Assuming if you were to get a conditional use permit tonight, when would you anticipate opening? Within a year?
Oh, yes, yes. We're hoping to break ground late summer, early fall is what we're planning on doing. A lot of that's dictated by materials,
Weather?
gas pumps, fuel tanks, those take time to get right now. Used to be you get them in 8 weeks, now they're 20-some, 30 weeks.
Like everything, right?
Yeah, everything, manufacturing.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess we've had a good discussion. I think we can move on to our findings of fact. This would be number 553, which is gasoline service stations in M1. Number 1, do you agree this is a conditional use, Mr. Acosta?
Yes, as it's stated in the ordinance.
Mr. Ferris?
Yes, I do. I think it's well defined.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yes, it's allowed with conditional use.
And M1, there's no doubt about that. That's the one. Number 2, harmonious with the comprehensive plan, et cetera, Mr. Acosta?
Yeah, it's, it's adding more services, more conveniences to the area. So I see that, contributing to the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I think it fits perfectly within the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. It's new business development.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree, it's harmonious with the comprehensive plan.
And part of the comprehensive plan is that number 553 category in section 7. Number 3, be harmonious, appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the vicinity. Mr. Acosta?
Yeah, I think it will improve the area. I mean, using that vacant lot that, currently gets dumped on, that type of stuff. Obviously, that'll be improved. I do believe, I hear the concerns, from the residents there. But I think I also hear that there may be more issues fixed than caused. I mean, because of some of the stuff that's going on now, sounds fairly dangerous, and there could be a slight impact on traffic. But I do think there's some positive to come out of it as a net result.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I think so as well. If they're partnering with BP, BP's gonna have standards that they have to meet for new construction. The maintenance part of it, you know, I witnessed earlier that I, stop at two of their other locations. They're always well maintained, always, clean. I have no concerns there. So I think it will actually improve some of the things like Mr. Acosta pointed out, in that area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
And I agree with those two prior comments, and I don't think it's gonna change the character of the area since it is a light manufacturing.
Changing the character of the general vicinity, well, there's a plant, large plant right across the street. Sadly, these people are stuck with their house, which dates back long before there was anything there but farms. So, the general vicinity, industrial, a road going down to other plants. I think that one's met. Number 4, hazardous or disturbing, Mr. Acosta.
I think in line with the previous comments on the previous question, again, I don't think the net impact should be a positive impact to that area.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think as Mr. Acosta pointed out earlier, I think it will fix, more things than cause harm, so.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments, and I hope the dialogue continues with, the people that own the property and the adjacent homeowners. With her concerns certainly valid, that they'll continue to work together and maybe come to a common, denominator of what you feel is safety, though I don't know if you'll ever have that safe feeling, which I think is the way we live today, but I hope you can get together and figure out something that would make you feel a little bit better.
Hazardous or disturbing, well, it's certainly not gonna disturb the plant. Doesn't sound like it's going to disturb the traffic. And I do agree with the installation of a maintained place like that that's lit up is gonna certainly stop the dumping and probably stop as much of the drug dealing as could be stopped. So on that, I kind of agree. I think that one's met. Number 5 is the one about utilities, Mr. Acosta.
Yes, see no issue there. The 2 large manufacturing plants in the immediate area is obviously adequate, public facilities.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. In fact, I think it's gonna be, providing additional services to that area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, but I see adequate public facilities and services.
And there are plenty adequate utilities and so forth in that area. Number 6, this is about requirements at public expense, not detrimental economic welfare. Mr. Acosta.
You know, it should have a positive economic impact on the community.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see any way it's gonna create excessive requirements at the public expense, and I think it will be a positive, addition to the economic welfare of our community.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I see no detriment to the economic welfare.
And I think it probably won't hurt. I see no detriment to the welfare and no need for public facilities and whatnot. Number 7, this will not involve uses, activities, processes, so forth, detrimental to any person's property by reason of excessive production of traffic noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors. Mr. Acosta.
No, based on the explanation of the setup and how they envision the operation, I don't see it having a negative impact.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, and I agree, with all those, comments as well. And one thing that I wanna point out is the diesel engines that we run today are, so heavily burdened with emissions control systems that, you know, the fumes are not gonna be what they were if this would've been built back in the seventies. So, you know, and I do appreciate the neighbors' comments, you know, about those things, because I would be concerned about that too, but I just wanna point out that emission control systems on these diesels and these big trucks anymore is, it is pretty efficient in reducing the fumes.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, especially with the prior comments. I just see no detriment.
Excessive production of traffic that's already heavily trafficked because of the industrial nature of that area. So I see no more traffic than, I think that street will be able to handle whatever traffic is there, because much of it's gonna be the plant traffic. Number 8, this is about vehicular approaches to the property, not interfering with traffic. Mr. Acosta.
No, I think the plans that's presented, don't show anything that's gonna create an interference with the traffic.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well, and, you know, I come back to the other aspects of this business. You know, they have a vested interest in making sure that a 80-foot semi can get in unencumbered, and do it safely.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Right, I don't think there'll be a problem with that one.
It has to be designed so that trucks can get in, so I think they'll take that into account. Number 9, destruction loss of natural scenic historic features. Mr. Acosta.
I think, again, as the builders explained, preservation of as much of the wetlands as possible, all that. I don't see any negative impact in those areas.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think, I think that there are enough governing agencies that they have to please to, stay away from damaging the wetland, that, they're not gonna do anything to jeopardize that.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, I see no problem with destruction or loss of natural scenic historic.
I know of no historic features there, and there are plenty of laws that are gonna protect the wetlands and so forth, so I think that one's met. Board, we have gone through our findings of fact, and we will take a motion.
I move that we approve the conditional use permit.
Second.
And if you and the second agree, I would like to put a stipulation on that they build a privacy fence between their property and the neighbor, if that's agreeable with you and the second.
Agreed with me, yeah.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve with one stipulation. Can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes, and I move that we approve this conditional use permit for a period of 2 years.
Didn't we already vote on it?
You didn't have a time.
I did not include a time, did not.
So I made a motion to approve that the conditional use permit will be valid for 2 years. Do we have a second?
Is that proper? Second.
And can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes.
That's a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to understand, what do you mean by conditional use for 2 years? Do you have to come back in front of the board every 2 years?
No, sir. What that means is you have a conditional use permit, and 2 years from now, you'll just have to renew it, subject to paying a renewal fee, and that there are no complaints or anything that would cause the thing to be reviewed. And at the time, it's the practice of the building office to send out an opportunity for you to come back and make your case that it should be for longer than that. So the reason I suggested, have I made it clear so far?
Yeah, I'm just kinda concerned because, you're throwing a 2-year condition from today. We're not opening for a year, we're gonna come back the year after it's open.
No, you won't have to come back, sir. The reason I put in 2 years was because of the neighbors' concerns. And you don't have to come back before the board unless you go your 2 years, you built your place, you've operated for a year and a half, whatever. No complaints, no problems. The practice of the building office now is to say, yeah, you can either just pay a renewal fee, you don't have to come back. You just pay a renewal fee, or if you want, you could come back and say, make a case that it should be like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever.
That's what I'm saying, so every 2 years we get to come back, or
Yeah.
renewal every 2 years.
Yeah, but you don't come back, you don't testify again. You'll be sent a mailing that says your renewal is due, and here's what it costs, and if you're happy with the 2 years, then fine, just send in your check.
Their concern is they're gonna invest a couple $1 million in,
That's what I was getting ready to say, and
It's gonna be $3 million.
yeah, it's gonna be a $3 million investment, and and we wanna do everything right. Naturally, when you put $3 million, you're gonna wanna do it right, but you spend $3 million, you don't wanna just take a chance for 2 years.
Well, if you, in all likelihood, you're not gonna take a chance, and even if you did do something that caused a complaint, then it can be addressed and fix the complaint. Does our lawyer wanna say something? Have at it.
The issue that you're running into is the zoning. It's zoned the way it's zoned. The only way you could get approved for a gas station was a conditional use. It's either have it rezoned or you can't have the gas station. Yeah, and the normal term of a conditional use, the practice of the board is 1 year. There are other businesses that have longer terms, and like the chairman said, when the meeting started, you heard all those renewals get approved. None of those people were here tonight. They all paid a fee. Nobody was here. So I understand what your concern is. The way to address it would be to ask that the property rezoned into a zoning place where it's permitted. But the only mechanism that this board can do it is a conditional use. And he did a 2 year, because in 1 year you wouldn't be anywhere. Probably you'd have no history of use. I would be shocked if you came back in 2 years and you had any issues, but I can't read.
The only thing I was concerned about. and it's
Well,
not
if you
that I
come
think-
up to the podium, sir.
It's not that I think they're gonna do anything wrong. I'm not worried about that. It's just, they're getting ready to spend $3 million.
And I understand that we have other businesses that come in this town and spend $5, $10, $15 million for a business. The location that's been chosen is zoned a certain way, and you have to have a conditional use. And that's what we got. If you want to avoid having to come back ever, the zoning change would have to happen into a zoning classification that said permitted.
Okay.
And we would avoid it.
Well, the other question I guess I wanted to ask, if you may not have to do really anything wrong, and you could have complaints.
That's not true. The board can't just deny your renewal for just any flimsy complaint. We've had instances in the past where applicants have come back on a renewal where there were complaints, and there was nothing the board could do because the complaints didn't add up to not renewing the conditional use.
And that was my only concern. As far as them renewing it, the renewal fee, that's not that much money. You can come back in, you renew it, you can go forward. It's just, I was concerned more about, just complaints that maybe messed them up, that really wasn't a merited complaint, but if there was just complaints. I mean, if I wanted to complain about you, I could complain about it, doesn't mean it was true.
The guy that comes in that was walking down the street and, he couldn't get in the store because it was closed and he complains about it,
Yeah,
that doesn't mean anything.
right.
But if IDEM comes in
Oh,
and
means
you
everything.
guys have been fined
Right.
for multiple violations, then that's cause for denial of the renewal.
And I'm not even worried about what, I'm not saying I'm not worried. I'm not concerned about on Devin's side, because I think the Pavies are gonna do everything they can to be a good neighbor and work with him under the circumstances. I think they're gonna do everything they can. Even not under the circumstances, that's the type of people they are, to work with anybody they can. But, you know, I think they'll do everything they can to be a great neighbor. I really do.
Well, and we're doing everything that we can to make this a possibility, but we can't rezone that area. We're not the board that does that. If you wanna quell all your fears of,
And I'm not complaining. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get a grasp of it, you know, get a good handle on it to understand what we're.
And I think the big thing is it would have to be a real issue for the use, for that renewal not to be granted. I mean, I would have a hard time coming up with it, other than maybe an IDEM or a DNR. I mean, it would be
Probably
something.
be something that would shut you down anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, that's,
Okay.
but I would recommend listen to our council's, suggestion of pursuing a rezoning.
Oh, and I think
'Cause you,
eventually,
it sounds like you have time, you're not talking construction for a while, but it is a little bit of a process, but it can be
well,
done.
and we can go ahead and do this and get the process of moving, and then work on that once we get things built, to try to go
Sure,
ahead
sure.
and move that.
I
Because-
seriously doubt that you have anything to worry about. The reason I put in was 2 years, because we have to put a time limit on it. And I put on 2 years. That's ample time for any serious complaint to come out. And like I've told you, our building office now sends out, if you'd like to get an extension, just come back, make your case, and in all likelihood, it'll be extended. I've been on this board for 6 years now, and I've never seen a conditional use revoked. And I've known a plan commission member, a friend of mine, who's been involved with this for 20 or 30 years. I don't think he's ever seen. You don't have to worry about that.
Naturally, you could understand our concern, not knowing, because we've not been through it
Yes,
before,
and
so
if
we
there
don't
had
know.
been some, I
I would do
understand
the
your
same if I
concern.
were in your shoes,
Yeah.
yes, I understand.
We granted once if you'd made the case during the presentation that there was some financial thing, bank loans, whatever, we could have made it longer, but nothing like that came out. Cause we have had one that had to have a longer term because of, bank loans, because of this, that, and the other regulation. So I really truly think you have nothing to worry about.
Okay. All right.
And in 2 years, you have an opportunity to come back and request a longer term.
And we may work on rezoning way before that.
Sure, sure.
But we appreciate everything you guys listening to us tonight.
No, thank you.
Sure. Got a few more little things for the record, old business, Landmark Apostolic Bible Church, Sean Sands, they paid their renewal fee. Per their renewal, or their conditional uses are renewed. We do have to take a minute or two. What do you board members think about changing our starting time from 6:30 to, say, for example, 6 o'clock, or 10 minutes after the plan commission meeting if they go beyond 6?
I'm good at the set time of
Yeah,
6.
6 o'clock.
I prefer set time, and 6 o'clock sounds appropriate.
Well, the only reason I put the second part in is because maybe once in every 10 years they'll go beyond. So we can't vote on that, but nobody has any problem with 6 o'clock?
No,
No, I do not.
And we would necessarily have to tack on 10 minutes and/or 10 minutes after plan commission ends, in case they go past
Could we
6.
add having dinner catered in, or?
Fago, all you want is Fago.
And I guess that's all. Do we have anything I've forgotten? Take a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned.
Is it Valentine's Day yet?
No, we didn't go that late.
Yeah, happy Valentine's.
Oh,
Same to you.
thank you.
Same to you.
Again, I will not be at next month's meeting.
What?
It's fine.
Can't we,
I'm going to Palm Springs.
can't we video conference you in?
Yeah.